Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of What the Forensics. My name is Journey, and I am joined here today by the lovely Nicole and Rebecca. This week, we're discussing the case of Noah Presgrove. And this case was brought to our attention by a listener who reached out to us over Facebook Messenger and thought it would be a really good fit for an episode. And I didn't think there was much known about this case, but judging by the amount of information that Rebecca has, I might be mistaken. However, if you do have any extra information about Noah Presgrove's death, the state authorities ask that you contact them at 580-353-0783. And that's just if you have any extra information. It's still unsolved. I don't really know how long it's been happening, but I'm really intrigued to get into this case because it's very horrific. He was 19 years old and they don't know what happened, and there's a bunch of oddities about it. So I'm really excited for Rebecca to educate us on it, and hopefully we can kind of stay on track with the investigation and kind of give you guys updates as well and see how this case progresses. And with that, I will pass the mic over to Rebecca and she can tell us a little bit more about Noah Presgrove.
Thank you so much. I am actually quite excited about this. Again, one of our listeners reached out with this case, and I'll be honest, even though this is really recent, like it happened on Labor Day last year, so 2023. So despite being so recent, I had really not even heard about this case. So to look into it and see just how bizarre it is, I'm shocked that none of us have heard of it. So let's get into it.
Yeah.
So Labor Day weekend 2023 began the same way that many students choose to ring in the end of a summer-long weekend, with a big booze-fueled party, even if they're underage.
Naturally.
Of course. So that party, which should have been memorialized by hazy Snapchat memories of a great time, was instead the scene for what would turn into a long, complicated, and still unsolved murder case with many twists, turns, and secrets. So today we're going to be exploring the very recent case of the death of Noah Presgrove, who, as Journey said, was a 19-year-old boy, and he was a recent high school graduate of Comanche, Oklahoma. Or Comanche, Oklahoma, sorry. I had to look up how to pronounce that because it looks easy, and then I still did it wrong. So Noah Presgrove was born and raised in Comanche, Oklahoma. At least what I could find he was. He's described by his family and friends as like a really athletic, selfless person who would just do anything for anyone, like kind of give them the clothes off your back kind of guy. So Noah had just graduated high school in May of 2023. But he chose to take a gap year, as many of us do, between high school and your next steps. I was reading some stuff that was saying he was specifically taking a gap year because he had a cousin that was a year younger than him, and he wanted to join the Marines together with him when his cousin graduated. So he was just going to basically defer a year and do it with his cousin. But then I also read stuff that was just saying he didn't really know what he wanted to do, and he didn't really have enough money for college yet. So he was saving and like applying to scholarships and stuff. So I don't know, but he was doing the basic high school graduate thing. So on Labor Day weekend 2023, so just for reference, I'm not sure if Labor Day is in other countries or if it is at the same dates. It's the weekend of September 1st to 4th. So on this weekend, Noah had a big decision to make regarding his plans. He could either go to Rocklahoma, which is an annual 3-day rock and metal music festival, with his family in a town that's 3.5 hours away from his own town. Or he could stay in Comanche to attend a 4-day double feature party. And by that, I mean like they were celebrating the birthday of his 22-year-old friend named Avery Combs. And they were also just having this party as like a big Labor Day celebration and like back to school celebration for those who were going back to school. Because they said Noah had just graduated and his friend Avery was 22. So I don't know if she's in college or university or just simply having a birthday party. Everything even about this party is slightly bizarre to me. Like I've never heard of a 4-day planned party. That was wild.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Do we know if it was at like
not a cabin, but sometimes people will like rent a building or a house or somewhere Airbnb for everyone to just gather and party. Like it could have been.
So it was apparently just at this girl's house.
Oh,
like
okay.
They live in a pretty rural town. It's called Terrell. I think they said it was just like one town over from Comanche.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was, I guess she just had like a pretty nice house. I believe it said she still lived with her parents, but her parents weren't at the house over the weekend.
Classic.
So
Okay.
yeah, Noah had ended up choosing to go to this friend's party, as we now know, instead of going to Rocklahoma, reportedly because he was planning on bringing along a friend of his who it was never actually specified who this friend was. They were only 16, but it was speculated that this 16-year-old friend he wanted to bring was like a new girlfriend.
Oh.
But apparently Rocklahoma is kind of known to be like pretty also booze fueled. I don't know what it is with this story and alcohol, but I mean, like, I guess a lot of murder entails it.
Yeah.
So yeah, apparently this Rocklahoma is kind of known for having like a lot of alcohol, and minors do drink there, but not really knowing the family of the 16-year-old very well. Noah's family just didn't feel comfortable bringing them to this festival, which is so responsible of them. Round of applause. So yeah, he ended up going to the party instead. And even though Noah was friends with Avery, or the birthday girl of this big party, it was supposed to be quite like a big event. It wasn't just supposed to be like a little gathering. She apparently had posted invitations for this party to Snapchat with her house address listed on it.
Ooh.
Side note, I didn't know Snapchat was still that big.
Yeah.
And I also don't know a lot about it because I thought it was pretty much only for like private stories and conversations. However, I do know that there's a feature on Snapchat that you can post stories publicly to your own region. So yeah. I have a hunch that's what she did.
Yeah.
But yeah, she posted her address with all the details about the party to Snapchat. And I was reading that they said it was an estimated like 3 dozen different people kind of like trickling in and out of the party throughout the 4 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So apparently they weren't like, there wasn't 3 dozen there at once all the time, but a lot of people just coming and going as they pleased over the weekend.
Right.
So on September 1st of 2023, this was the Friday that marked the beginning of Labor Day. What is known is that Noah drove himself to the party in his own truck. However, the next parts of the story are where we start to get a little fuzzy. Partially because, of course, there was a lot of alcohol involved in this party. And also because people in partygoers just simply are not talking. And what we know, we've basically had to piece together from the information of the few people who are seemingly truthful and from the videos and photos that were posted to social media because of the party. So besides being a really long party, it started off pretty well as far as anyone could tell. There was a lot of laughs and mischief and obviously not sober emotions running pretty rampant. For some examples of, I guess, the hijinks and the drunk fun they got into as young boys and girls, there are Snapchat videos of partygoers, which included Noah, playing the slap game, quote unquote, which is just basically trying to slap each other as hard as you can in the face. I don't know the purpose of it. I don't know if it's to make the other person scream. I genuinely
think it's just
don't
a
understand.
guy thing. Like
It's just to prove that you're stronger. Like you can take the hits harder. Because
I feel like this is something Gigi and Bryce would do.
Yeah, no, we definitely do play a very similar game. Like it doesn't have a name and it's not something we do as an organized event, but like a lot of the guys will do I can't remember what it's called, but basically you do shot for shot. So you like hit each other and then like slowly amping up how hard you're hitting each other to see who like quote unquote pussies out first, you know?
Yeah. That does sound like a guy thing.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of this slap game.
All right. So yeah, it sounds very intellectual, very much like chess. Very distinguished game. But this is just one of the things that we have video footage of, like kind of what was happening at the party. And then of course there was like beer pong and there was like just your classic drinking games. So there's also multiple accounts at the party, which I'll get into in a little more detail later. But obviously, with like how much alcohol is going around, like the age of everyone attending, all this stuff, there was bound to be some issues sometimes. For instance, Noah was reported to have gotten into at least 2 fights during that party, which I will get into later, as I said. So Noah, he stayed over at Avery's, who was the party girl, on Friday night, so the first Friday of the party. But come Saturday, I want to say like evening or so, because again, the timeline's a bit iffy. But what is known is they did a lot of day drinking on Saturday. But then come Saturday evening, Noah just kind of wanted to go home. He was really drunk. He was living with his grandmother at the time, and he wanted to just check in on her and make sure she was doing okay. So he apparently, despite, being drunk, because I guess it's rural Oklahoma and no one cared, he drove himself home and he made it home. And that's where he slept for the night.
Did I miss? Sorry, I was checking my quiche. Did we miss how far away his grandmother's home was from the party? Like, did he have to drive quite a while, or was it just kind of a down the street straight line? I'm
really
gonna make
good
the drive.
Question. I didn't find exactly how far away it is, but I do know that it said it was in the town over.
Okay.
So it was probably like, I would guess like a 15 or so minute drive on the generous side. That's my hunch. But please correct me if I'm wrong, someone listening.
Okay.
But yeah, he got home, he slept soundly, and then come Sunday when he woke up, he's being contacted by his friends who are asking him to come back to the party. Like I said, Noah was a pretty well-liked guy. And I guess everyone else agreed he's the life of the party, needs to come back. Okay, great. But Noah actually initially told his friends that he wasn't able to come back because on his way home the night prior, his truck had actually started leaking oil. So he wanted to kind of go get that checked out. But he ended up telling his friends that if one of them could come back and give him a drive, then he'd happily go back to the party. So again, more vague details, but now we get even more vague as quote unquote, no one knows exactly how Noah got to the party, even though there's 2 different stories of 2 different people picking him up and driving him there. So the first story isn't actually that strange. It's just that a close friend, and I don't have the name written, but I'm pretty sure that friend is Jack, who I'll be mentioning later. Jack picked up Noah at his house and then apparently drove him all the way to the party and dropped him off in the driveway. And I didn't see anything that mentioned that this friend actually came into the party with him. It just said they dropped him off, which I just thought was a little strange given they were trying to convince him to come back to the party.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other story that's being told is that a different friend had picked up Noah, but they were only able to drive him as far as the truck stop that I guess was halfway between. So this friend then reportedly stopped at the truck stop, got a drink, got a bite to eat, and then left Noah at the truck stop for an undetermined amount of time. And then apparently Avery, who was the birthday girl, left her own party to come pick up Noah and then bring him back to the party.
Interesting.
I know. There's 3 separate people that could tell us which one of these stories is a lie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently no one knows how he got to the party.
Weird.
But okay. So one way or another, Noah did make it back to the party. So now we're at Sunday. This is day 3 of the party. Also happens to be September 3rd. And this is kind of when I'm going to say all hell breaks loose, which I was going to say I'm using pretty loosely, but now that I think about it, I don't think I am. I think this was just a very chaotic day. So once again, I don't think it needs to be said anymore. There was a lot of alcohol involved, and I don't think anybody at this point was sober. And of note, there are still many minors attending this party, including Noah, which himself was a minor in the United States.
That's so weird to think about.
I know. He'd be legal anywhere in Canada and Europe and most other places.
That's so weird.
I know. But there is also reports of 16-year-olds being at this party. So it wasn't just morally confusing adults.
Yeah, fair enough.
So videos from the party on this day show that at some point in either the late afternoon or the evening, a shirtless Noah is surrounded by girls who are all writing stuff all over his back and his butt. They're writing I couldn't tell if they were like Sharpies or what, but still, like they're marker. They're not coming off when they're rubbing it. So all over his back, his butt, I think like his arms and stuff too. They're writing stuff like Noah is hot, like so cute, and they're drawing penises all over him. Just, like basic party stuff. And I just want to say that this is a really important thing to remember for when we find him later, deceased. So later in the night, it is said that Noah got into an altercation with his friend Jack, who is the one that I mentioned earlier had possibly driven him to the party. So Jack had apparently thought that Noah was hitting on his girlfriend. Can't remember her name off the top of my head, but I will note that the Jack's girlfriend is the party holder's sister. So Jack is dating this girl. Jack suspects Noah of hitting on her because apparently multiple people kind of saw Noah and this girl like huddling kind of in the corner and like chatting together. And it looked like they were trying to like shut out the outside world sort of thing. And basically they just looked too close for Jack's comfort. So they had apparently gotten into a verbal altercation, which ended, as we know, in another slap fight because it was recorded and posted. But this pretty quickly actually cooled down because like they were really close friends and it was probably like a lot of alcohol fueled emotions. So they were like, okay, I got my slap in. I'm good. We're good now. However, it wasn't too long after this altercation that Noah ended up getting into another fight. But this time it was with I think they said it was a 16-year-old. His name was Mikey. Obviously, Mikey was also drinking, and Mikey accused Noah of stealing his phone, even though Noah, I think as far as anyone knew, like didn't even really talk to this guy at the party very much. He was just accused out of the blue. So this kid apparently wanted to start a fight. So he fish hooked Noah's mouth was the description it gave.
With his finger?
So, yeah, like finger in mouth pulling cheek.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a really weird way, in my opinion, to start a fight, but that's beside the point. So Noah responded to that by biting his finger, of course, as one does.
Which, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Like, if someone did that to me, I probably would do the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't find a lot of detail about, like, how bad this fight was, but I'll just say, like, it was a little scuffle. There were some words thrown around, and I'm sure some were slaps. But then someone found Mikey's phone under a couch cushion, and then they were fine, and they made up, and it was good. So no more altercations. We're all happy and fine again. We're back to partying, taking Snapchat memories, and drinking. And around midnight, despite being really very drunk, partygoers had said that Noah and a few other of the guys had left the house on some side-by-side vehicles or a side-by-side vehicle, which, side note for our listeners, if they don't know, it's kind of like an ATV or like a four-wheeler.
It's like a little buggy, an ATV buggy.
Yeah. It's almost like a tiny little Jeep that has more power of like a quad than a Jeep.
Yeah. And you sit side by side with someone inside.
It's like a souped
cute.
up golf cart.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't even have like or it does have a roof, but
Some
it doesn't
have
have
roofs.
Doors. Okay.
Some have doors, depending on how
man.
expensive of a one. They are so fancy and so much money. It's stupid.
Yeah.
Usually people with kids will have them because you can strap into them.
Oh,
gotcha.
smart.
Like they have seatbelts and like windshields and stuff. They're like basically a Jeep. But just
cool.
If it had a kid with a golf cart.
So
noted.
What I'm getting from that is that they're probably safer than like a four-wheeler, but they're still very much not safe to drive drunk.
100%. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So they, Noah and some guys did something very not safe and went out around midnight while they're all very drunk to drive the side-by-side around the property, I suppose. Just a quick side note about this property, by the way. I know we mentioned earlier, like they're in like a rural place, but this is rural. Like apparently the driveway of this house was half a mile long. And I think they said there was one side road and then it connected to like 1,200 miles of straight highway. So
wow.
Yeah. So it's we're in a pretty rural place, so I suppose if there's anywhere to recklessly drive a vehicle at midnight, it would be somewhere like that. But I still don't recommend it and advise against it.
Yeah.
But this was happening. They were doing their midnight rendezvous, and it is said that during this, at some point, Noah actually crashed the vehicle. So this is another point where we get conflicting stories. There's some people from the party that claim that this was just like a little accident, like probably tipped one of the wheels or turned a little too fast and turned it on its side and he got a little scraped up. But then other people were saying that he actually either completely flipped the vehicle and caused severe injuries. Some were saying he was actually standing on top of the vehicle and got flung off the vehicle. So no one, I mean, actually the people with him know what happened, but no one else, we don't know the true story of what happened. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, there was an off-roading vehicle accident that occurred and Noah was involved. So after this accident, his friends apparently got him back to the party and they asked a friend of theirs who was at the party and also just happened to be a registered nurse. They wanted her to have a look at it, like, just to make sure he was all good. So she ended up determining that he was A-okay, he didn't have any severe injuries, and they didn't call the police or ambulance, and they just continued on with their party. So they didn't want to just, completely ignore their potentially injured drunk friend, because he could have been injured and he was still drinking. No, apparently a bunch of the girls at the party thought that because he was pretty dirty from the accident, because obviously he was rolling around in some dirt, they decided that Noah needed a shower. So a group of girls, there's like 5 of them, and it's a Snapchat video that they posted publicly as well. Stripped him down. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That is illegal, actually, what they've just done.
Yeah. So it's Noah. I can't see if he's wearing any bottoms, but based on what happens next, he is completely nude. And It's 5 girls videoing while they're showering him. And then apparently after this, they claim that Noah got out of the shower and started running around the party naked. And they were apparently chasing him to make him get dressed. So ultimately, they were able to get a little small pair of white shorts on him. And once dressed, Noah asked if he could sleep in Avery's bed, who, as I said before, was the host of the party. It's not really clear at this point whether he was asking like to sleep with Avery, just like in his drunken state, or if he just really actually needed somewhere to lay down and like get some sleep. But either way, the girls absolutely refused to let him sleep in her bed and made him sleep on the floor. And just before, I know.
Sorry, I'll keep my mouth shut.
Oh, no. You don't have to do that at all. Sorry. I have a hunch I'm getting to why they may not have let him in his bed. So yeah, before moving on to the next kind of events, I just want to note that I think there was some drama between Avery and Noah that is kind of like playing into why they wouldn't let him sleep in her bed. So it's a little unclear whether this happened like at the party at some point within the 4 days or like shortly before the party. But apparently Noah had been told or made aware of the fact that Avery had a crush on him. And in response to being told that she has a crush on him, he said that she was a, quote, fat, nasty bitch. And that's it.
Spoken like a true 19-year-old.
Yeah, really though. Yeah. Unfortunate, but yeah.
Yep.
So just a hunch, like they could just be looking out for their girl and being like, no man treats you that way. But I don't know. There was also some other weird stuff that I read about Avery and her crush on him and Avery's mother being involved.
Oh.
But like, I don't know how much of it was rumor. I know. I don't know like how much of it was rumor. And I think I actually need to like dig and figure out how much of it is just slander, basically. So I'm not going to go into that weird rumor. All we need to know is they have some weird, possibly not good chemistry.
Okay. Noted.
Yeah. So then going back to the party now, according to the girls at the party that weren't letting him sleep in the bed, apparently being told to sleep on the floor was so saddening to Noah. He was so disappointed in hearing this that while still very inebriated, he demanded that he needed to go for a walk, like right now. And then so they also claim that as he was putting on his shoes to go for this walk, while, by the way, still just in his little white pair of shorts and nothing else, he tried to put on his own pair of Adidas, but couldn't find his own shoe, got mad, and then just took some other guy's random shoe. So Noah then, after this, supposedly opened the door. He walked down the driveway and he just went out of sight. And that was the last time anyone saw him. In an interview with Noah's friend Jack, which notably, I'm not positive who the interview was with. I think it was either with like People Magazine or the Daily Mail. It was a news agency doing like a big piece on this case. When he was interviewed, he reportedly said that he was asleep when Jack had left, but he heard when he woke up that Noah had crashed the side-by-side around like 3 a.m.
So he left in the side-by-side? I thought he left while walking and just walked away.
Sorry. Yeah, I guess that was a little confusing. Noah did leave on foot. He left, for a little bit of context, it's believed that he left on foot around like 3:30ish a.m.
Okay.
So is it possible that when they told him that he had crashed the side-by-side, it was just him like retelling what had happened already the night, being like, Noah crashed the side-by-side and then he got back and then like now we can't find him, but like it wasn't, he crashed the side-by-side at 3 a.m.
The order of events weren't.
Yeah, I think I may have misunderstood the 3 a.m. part.
No, 3 a.m. would line up that makes sense.
Okay, so yeah, he basically, it's not like, I just brought Jack into it because people are, like, Jack was a really close friend of his. Mm-hmm. But apparently, like, according to Jack was asleep when, like, everything went down.
Okay.
So he was only hearing from friends after waking up. They're like, oh yeah, this is what happened at this time. This is what happened at this time. So the times very well could be misconstrued. Gotcha. But it was a hunt. Like, basically, it's estimated that they crashed the side-by-side around 3 a.m. And then sometime before 3:41 a.m., Noah left the house. Okay. So like that whole thing with like the shower, trying to get in bed, the shoes, that all happened within like a 45-minute period.
Wow.
So at 3:41 a.m., one of the girls who was seen previously in the Snapchat video of Noah being showered posted a picture to her own Snapchat story. And it was a picture of a girl from the party just like looking at the camera, smiling, like looking like she's having a good time, with a caption that simply read, quote, "Well, Noah's missing," unquote. And I think it's really interesting that was apparently the very last video or photo anyone posted from the party.
From the party as a whole?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I love seeing your brain gears working right now.
Well, because I wonder if it was like they just, in a sense, sobered up. They're like, oh my God, he's missing. And then they're like, wait, no, he's actually missing. We cannot find him. We need to find him now.
Mm-hmm. But then the question, like in my brain, I'm like, if they say, well, he's missing, how long has he been gone for them to determine that he's missing at that point? Is he just gone? And they're like, oh, he's missing. But then for everyone to just radio silence after.
Yeah, that's what's so weird about it with me too. Like I can definitely understand like he's missing, like they're all drunk and he goes out for a walk in the middle of the night and like, oh no, he's gone. But because we don't know like the exact timeline, it's so hard to know, like, were they genuinely concerned at this point?
Yeah.
Did they ever genuinely have concern?
Or he's missing?
Yeah. It's wild. It reminds me of, I don't know, were you there, Nicole, when we were at Beer Olympics and the one girl got mad and left and we didn't know where she was? And so we had to like call her parents and be like, we don't know where she is. Like, we don't know what happened. We don't know if she's driving. We don't know how sober she is. And the whole party just stopped.
Yeah.
Oh no.
And it's giving me flashbacks to that. And like, we literally, like, everything just stopped until we could find her again.
That's so scary. And see, at the same time, that's how you should react in a situation where you think someone is in danger or in danger of themselves or others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I feel like that could have been why no one posted anything else, because they never found him. And if we had never found her,
exactly,
the party would have stopped. Like that would have been it.
I was just gonna say, in this circumstance, he didn't come back to the party, whereas in ours, like, she did come back, and so we were like, okay, let's just pick things up.
We're all good now.
Yeah. And so, okay, continue. I have questions, but continue.
Okay. So I just want to say that, like, it should have been relatively easy for them to, like, quote unquote find Noah when he left the party.
Mm-hmm.
As this is like a very, like I said, it's a really rural area with like nothing but fields and straight highway. But I am going to give them a bit of the benefit of the doubt in this situation, just because, like they're saying, like, it's at this point, it is before dawn. So the sun hasn't even come up yet. It is the darkest point at night. And from multiple accounts of this area, they say it is very dark at night. So I can imagine, like, if he wasn't murdered, or if they did happen to actually stumble across his body and miss it trying to search for him, I don't think that's totally unreasonable. Yeah. But again, we don't even have evidence that they tried to look for him.
Yeah.
But at 5:53 in the morning on Monday, September 4th, local police received a phone call from a motorist who told the 911 dispatcher as he was driving that he was unsure of what, quote, was laying on the shoulder of the road, but that it, quote, looked like a body. And he followed it up just saying, quote, it just looked awfully odd. I'm not positive the perfect timeline of his body being discovered, but police received their first phone call at 5:53, but they also received another phone call either shortly before, I believe shortly after it, but I couldn't determine whether this phone call was from the same person or from another person, or if it was from a truck driver that reported seeing the body first. This 18-wheeler was driving down the highway, thought he saw something weird, was going to keep going, and decided to turn around and have a look at what it was. And he said by the time he got back to it, there was multiple cars at the scene. So it's just a weird coincidence that, like, multiple people at the same time are who found his body. But I suspect that it was because it's almost 6 a.m. People are on their way to work. This is the highway.
Yeah. I'm just trying to find in the autopsy here too, because he does mention it's like a single lane highway, max 85 kilometers or 85 miles, 65 miles or something like that. But it's like the main drag. So there'd be people coming and going from it. Yeah,
they said it was Highway 18, I think, but it was a one-lane highway both ways. So like just one lane going front, one back, and it's split down the middle with a yellow line. So it's not a big highway, but you're right, Nicole, it is their main highway. But either way, the cops have now been notified and the cops are on their way to the scene. So let's talk about the crime scene. Noah was found just off the side of the highway, on the shoulder of the highway, laying naked and in the fetal position, and he was observed wearing 2 different shoes. And also of note, because I know I mentioned earlier that they had drawn all over him with marker, but it was noted that there is absolutely no marker found on his body, which some of the girls did later state was because they gave him a shower, which, while fair, in the video of them giving him the shower, you can still see the marker on his body.
Do we know if it was like Sharpie? I would assume permanent marker. I just feel like that always makes its way out at parties.
Yeah, see, that's also what I wasn't able to find. Like, I just keep reading that they drew on him with markers, but I can't seem to find, like, was it Crayola? You're right, was it Sharpies?
I feel like even with Crayola, if you have a water soluble marker, you're still going to have a residue if it was the day of or day before that it was washed off, right?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Weird.
It's very weird how clean his body was. So yeah, like we'd said, he was quite clean, and not even the details of the crime scene are perfectly clear, with there being differing reports of even where the shorts that he was wearing were found. So as we said, he was found laying naked. And some say that the shorts, like the white shorts that he was seen leaving the house in, some are saying that they were found neatly folded beside his body. And then others are saying that they were like 25 feet away, just like in the middle of the road. Also of note, there was very minimal blood at the scene. There was blood, but not nearly as much as you would expect for the given trauma that was clearly apparent on the back of his head. He suffered a major blunt force trauma of some kind, which Nicole is going to tell us all about shortly. And this lack of blood definitely did make it appear as though Noah was not killed where his body was ultimately discovered. And then it was also noted that his fingertips appeared as if they were like shredded, and that he had like cuts on his shoulder, which is interesting.
Oh, we'll get into that. Don't you worry. The fingertips is interesting. I will say the fingertips is interesting. Unless I just can't translate it in the autopsy report, that wasn't really mentioned.
Interesting. And it's also possible, like, maybe this one wasn't a good source. Because, like, a lot of the sources are, like, tabloids, like People Magazine and the Daily Mail. And so there's
going to be a lot of different opinions, too, based on, like, the police report. I assume the police report and the autopsy report aren't going to be 100% the same as well.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah. It was additionally reported that scattered around the crime scene, they found clumps of hair, some fragments of broken teeth, and 3 small pieces of a white metal chain.
Yep.
But yeah, overall, this crime scene did not scream hit and run even from first glance. It did not look like a hit and run. So obviously, seeing this, police very quickly began investigating Noah's death, beginning with trying to identify who the body is. And interestingly, and I don't have this piece written down, so it's going to be slightly fuzzy, and we can like go over this again in the future. But Jack, who, as we said, apparently slept through everything, interestingly, at 5:53 in the morning, when the police received the phone call about the body, at the exact same time, Jack sent a text to his dad asking his dad to remember to bring him a hat because they were supposed to go fishing together later that day. And he was letting his dad know that he was on his way home now because he was running a little late.
At exactly 5:53, that text went through.
Yeah. Just weird coincidence. Like, I don't think Jack knew his body was going to be found at that time, but
what are the chances? Yeah.
But because Jack, I presume, also lived in Comanche, to get back home to his dad, he had to drive the highway. So it was around, I want to say it was like 6:05. Again, I don't have it written down, but it was like very shortly after his body was discovered. Jack was driving up the road, you know, kind of not concerned about Noah, because he just assumed that Noah went home earlier. He found a ride with someone else. Because again, he didn't even know Noah was, quote, missing. However, he pulled up to the scene of traffic because he sees, you know, all these blaring sirens and lights. And he's like, what's going on? And he inadvertently just drove up to his own friend's death scene.
Wow.
So he called his dad from the scene and said, like, you need to get over here. Blah, 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 blah. But I believe they had said that Jack was the first person to give a positive ID on Noah's body.
That's so sad.
I know. It's heartbreaking. Again, like, I'd like to do a future episode talking only about the investigation and like kind of all that, because even like Jack and his dad's story don't completely align with like what they told police. So, but it's like not a single person in this case's story aligns with what they told police. So we got to really like deep dive on this. But just getting really, really quickly, like the quick rundown of like the first little bit of the interview or of the investigation. By 6 a.m. on the same day that his body was found, all of the partygoers had deleted all of the footage of the party from social media. Like, they wiped it clean, tried to make it look like this party didn't happen. And that was about half an hour after his body was found. And I don't think they were actually confirmed that it was him at that point. Like, the police were going over to notify them.
That's so sketchy.
I know.
Because I was going to ask, that was my question I was going to ask earlier, was, were things posted after the fact? Like, when people were all like hungover, the morning after the party, that kind of thing, you'll get Snapchats. I'm like, did they post then or no? Like, it's interesting that they just deleted absolutely everything.
Yeah, like they didn't
Yeah.
even have their like hungover after posts.
Like,
Like they
whoa, great party, bro. Like,
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but like a 4-day party,
oh,
I
yeah.
don't expect that many party goers to wake up before 6 a.m.
True.
on their own will.
And think to delete Snapchats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every single one
Yeah.
of them too. Like, ugh.
Mhm.
But further, just to make this even better, the police, the initial interview they conducted with partygoers was a mass interview. So they didn't separate them one by
Just
one.
in a huge room was like, hey, who knows what?
Yep.
That's such a
And
huge mess up on the police's
God
part.
damn it.
Wow.
oh yeah. And when this interview was happening, partygoers stated that they had no idea what led up to his death, and they didn't even know that he was found dead. Like this was their first time hearing about it. Some of which, like, they actually probably this was their first
Mhm.
time, but I do not think everyone in that room didn't know.
Yeah.
There were definitely things leading up to it that they could have alluded. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with the partygoers being of like no help to the police obviously had to resort to checking the social media, but again, no social media. So, the police had to basically get warrants to go through all of the partygoers' phones for evidence. I think they said they got like a geofence warrant or something. So, like everything within a certain radius they were able to search, which was pretty cool.
Really cool. Yeah.
But I don't know why this wasn't taken like more seriously from the get-go. Like I don't understand how all of the footage was deleted before 6 a.m. and the police didn't have the minds to be like, okay, that's weird.
Yeah. Like, why are
Like-
you doing that if you don't know that he's dead yet? Like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like as if it's not like, yeah, maybe the cops were maybe unsure of all the footage because they obviously weren't at the party. So maybe they didn't know yet that people might be lying to them. But there's also times that people were just very blatantly lying to the cops and they still aren't suspects or don't seem to be primary suspects for some reason. For instance, Carter, who was the name I mentioned I couldn't remember earlier. Carter was Jack's girlfriend, who was the reason for the altercation with Noah. And she's also the sister of the party host. So cops interviewed Carter, and she apparently initially told cops that she didn't even know who Noah was.
Bad move.
why would you lie about that?
Yeah.
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 Like
you're not
she
getting
apparently-
anything from that.
Absolutely not. Like you're allowed to know the murder victim.
Yeah. That's wild.
Mm.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
that's really weird. She did like end up telling him the truth. Like, yeah, I do actually know him. But to make the matters even worse, like not only is that we could potentially give her benefit of the doubt, chalk it up to like, oh, she's really nervous. Like people lie when they're nervous. It happens. But there's no way that was the case because when police checked her phone, not only could they not find any of the footage that she had taken at the party, but they found that almost her entire phone had been wiped to the point where she didn't even have her own boyfriend's name saved in her contacts.
Wow.
Interesting. I wouldn't even know how to
Yeah.
do that. How does one go about doing that to someone's phone?
I know. I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, aside from like factory resetting everything, like
Yeah.
that's so much effort to put into something if you're not guilty, you know?
Yeah.
Like if there's not
Or
something
any
else going
involvement.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then just one of the last things, I have a couple more points, but another thing to be annoyed about is the fact that police didn't search the house after like at least not initially. I think they may have in the subsequent days, like ways out, but they didn't initially search the house because this is a quote by like someone on the police service. Quote, his body wasn't found there. Unquote.
Interesting. Maybe they just their warrant didn't cover searching in the house.
Yeah. I guess.
Like they could search the land, but not the house, you know?
But I feel like if
Possibly.
it placed
I'll have to look more into that.
the warrant system, yeah. I'm like, if you could have placed him, well, then again, you can't really place him at the party because no one's saying anything and there's no photo evidence to prove as much. But
Yeah.
like, what would you need to justify a search there physically? I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it would make sense. Like, yeah, he was there before, just search before. But in a legal setting, you're like, does it work that way? I don't know.
Yeah, it's like how do you prove that he was there, like you said?
Yeah, totally fair. I think that's a conversation to expand on with an investigative episode.
I agree.
Yeah.
So what's completely bonkers to me is just the fact that, like, despite all the suspicious stuff surrounding this case and like the conflicting stories and the obfuscation of evidence, like the social media stuff, paired with the manner that Noah was found, like fetal position, naked, different shoes, underwear off. But initially they ruled this death a vehicular hit and run.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that was initially what it was ruled. At some point that was overturned. I think it was after the autopsy this was overturned. They're like, okay, it's not a hit and run, but clearly something happened. But what annoys me the most is that despite all of the problems with the evidence they've found, they're still not officially investigating this as a murder. Because they're still claiming that they don't know or they can't determine whether it was an accidental death or a homicide, so they're not investigating it as a homicide.
That is baffling to me, given the injuries. One does not die from blunt force trauma in the manner that he did without intention or a second party killing him, in my opinion.
Yeah.
My no medical training opinion, just what I
feel read. I feel like you should even do your due diligence to decide, like, maybe you're not proving that it was a homicide, but disprove that it was a hit and run, right? Yeah. Like, you kind of owe it to him to figure out how he actually died.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Okay, it's not a hit and run. Well, then what is it? You can't just leave it undetermined. What is it then? Do your job.
Exactly. He was a 19-year-old boy who died mysteriously. Like, yeah, it's just ridiculous.
And there could be theories about this. I wonder what the corruption in the town is like. That's for another story.
That is actually a major source of theories. There's a whole subreddit called r/Noah Presgrove where people just share updates of this case and theorize and all that sort of stuff. And again, this is what I'm saying. We've been here for like an hour and I have so much to say. But like there's people saying like that the first cop on the scene actually disturbed the evidence and he moved some of the evidence. There's stuff saying there's like evidence of multiple people from the party claiming to go look for the body and their phones actually pass over where the body was found. So they should have found the body, but they didn't. Yeah, there is just so much and I have so much to say, but we're already at an hour and I really, really want to hear what Nicole has to say about this autopsy. So I am going to cut myself off there and give Nicole a chance to talk.
Okay, well, thank you so much for telling us everything about it. I agree that we do need to do like an actual like investigative episode because I need to figure out what happened to this kid. It's crazy. I would also like to know where the blood is. Like, why? Like, I feel like you just retrace what you think are his steps and you should be able to find something.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
There couldn't have been very many places that he was prior to ending up on the side of the road, in my opinion. Because even if
I would agree,
like their phones passed over where the body was found, maybe he wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe he was still wherever he died and then hadn't been moved to this spot yet. So like, I don't know.
It's very possible. There's so many possibilities. And I just wish we could be the investigators on this because I don't think the police are doing it justice, at least according to what has been released.
Yeah. Totally fair. Okay, Nicole, would you mind sharing with us what you found with his autopsy report?
Yes. Okay. I will say it's going to be half jargon, half attempt to put it into layman terms. I do not have a medical degree. Please, anyone, if I mistake something, just tell me. And we'll chat about it and we'll learn together. Okay. Quickly too, I wanted to say, an abrasion, usually the result of a scrape or a rough surface of some sort. You can think of it as like raspberries or just like skinning your knee, kind of like that's an abrasion. Lacerations are cuts, slices, tears in a very simple sense. And avulsions are typically when skin or a body part is partially or completely torn away, which is important to kind of note. So you had kind of discussed this a little bit, Rebecca, but within the autopsy report itself, it gave a little rundown of the circumstances of how he was found and the circumstances of his death. A lot of it corresponds and correlates with what you've said. So a pair of shorts were found several feet from him, and these were white printed shorts without observable damage. So they weren't torn, they weren't ruined or anything. They were just white shorts with a print on them, maybe. I don't know. That's irrelevant. But they were his, as the story that you've told us explains. There was a piece of a molar tooth several feet from him. There was a clump of hair found several feet from him on the road. And there was a clump of hair also found on his right buttock, but there was no blood or tissue on it. So that to me feels like it was just like a snipping of hair, maybe, I would think.
It's weird for a clump of hair to like stick to a body part if there's not like a fluid to stick to it. You know what I mean? Like, I guess
especially on his right butt cheek. You're getting this clump of hair. If he was in a fetal position, I could see if his right cheek was up, that he could have it on kind of his hip. Yeah. But like, I don't understand what led to that.
Interesting.
Yeah. Do we know if the molar found and the hair found are his?
Yes, they are.
They are.
Okay. Retract. Hair, I'm not 100% sure on. The molar tooth, we do know is his.
We do know it's his. And this metal chain, are we talking like necklace?
Yeah. From my understanding, it was a white metal chain. Oh, now that you say
I also read that it was a white metal chain.
I assumed it was like a white, what is it? It's white silver? White.
Oh, like white gold or something?
White gold chain.
And in the pictures, he does have what looks to be a chain.
So that's what I had initially read it as, and that was my understanding of it, was just 3 pieces of kind of a necklace that was found with him. There were, of note, there were no vehicle parts or debris at the scene.
That is important for a hit and run.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he was in a complete state of rigor mortis, with livor mortis on his backside, except those areas exposed to pressure. So rigor mortis is just stiffening of the body essentially, and livor mortis is essentially just the pooling of blood.
So does the livor mortis match to how he was found? Because if he was on the fetal position on his side,
that would not correlate correlate to the rigor on, or the liver, mortis. Yeah, on his back. On his back.
Which means
that he was probably killed and laying in a different position for a while before being moved.
Yeah, because it takes a while for both rigor and livor mortis to set in.
And he was in a state of complete rigor too.
Oh, wow.
But he was brought in 7:31 a.m. He was at the medical examiner's office. Found on the autopsy report is showing 6:18 a.m., which is very close to the 6:05 a.m. timeline. So to be in the complete state of rigor plus liver, with an hour difference between finding him and being at the autopsy, is
that doesn't quite
noteworthy, I'd say.
Especially if he's in rigor in fetal and his liver shows that he was was laying on his back for an extended period of time.
Yeah, you'd see the liver on the side of his body.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Oh, I'm excited already. I'm not excited because this is tragic and it's an awful thing that's happened that we need to figure out, but it's fascinating to piece together where everything kind of went wrong and be like, hey, there are gaps here. like you said, Rebecca, he was wearing a pair of mismatched shoes. He had an Adidas on his left foot that had grass and debris inside. And then he had on his right foot a Hey Dude shoe. I've never really heard of the brand. It's a brand.
They're huge.
Are they?
Really?
Yeah,
Now
everyone I know
them.
has a
I
pair.
Googled them and they look kind of like a mix between Tom's and Sperry's.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they
I
a big
know the
Alberta
logo.
shoe?
I don't know if
Or
they're
are they
huge
just
in
in
only
general?
Alberta, but everyone I know has a pair.
Really?
Really?
Yeah.
I had never heard of them beforehand. Okay, time to do some
Wild.
digging. Yeah, I had no idea.
Okay.
But there was not a lot of stuff found in his Hey Dude shoe. So all of the kind of dirt and grass was in the Adidas shoe. No observable damage to both shoes as well, notably. Going back to the drawings that you had mentioned in black marker. He was received with a drawing in black ink of a stick figure on the right side, or the side of his right thigh, sorry. So he had apparently one drawing on him still, according to the ME.
Interesting.
So then I'm curious then, why only one survived?
Yeah, like I wonder,
guess?
did they miss it when they were scrubbing him?
Yeah. Or because you said there were photos, though. There were photos of him with all of the marker, right? Like people had said that there were.
Yeah, like there's videos of them actively drawing all over him.
Yeah, videos. Sorry. Okay. Weird. Okay, yeah, because they only had the one. He was received. Sorry, go ahead.
What did the one say? Do we know?
The drawing? It was just a stick figure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just a stick figure on the side of his right thigh. An interesting thing that they noticed that they didn't appear related to the circumstances causing his death, but he had scabs and healed abrasions on the right side of his nose, the back of his right hand, including the 3rd through 5th knuckles, on the middle of his index finger, all the way to the middle of his pinky finger, and then on the end of his middle finger. So the end of his middle finger makes me think of the shredded fingertips thing that you had mentioned, Rebecca. Like maybe that could be it, but it seemed like a healed injury.
Like it almost sounds like there's just like maybe whoever saw the shredded fingertips could have been seeing what exactly those like injuries you just described.
Yeah. But it does sound like from that he had maybe been in an altercation in the past, punched someone, those had healed over. And then he also had healed abrasions to his lower back of the left hand, including 5th knuckle and the middle of his 5th finger, and then the back of his left ankle, on his left heel, and the top of his left foot. So again, seems like maybe punched something with his left hand, the way that his knuckles were abraded. But then the injuries to the left foot, that I'm not positive about how he could have gotten them, but they were healed a little bit too.
Could any of those have happened from the rollover, like when he crashed the ATV or the side-by-side?
My question would be how long prior to the body being found did that side-by-side crash happen? Because I think it's still a bit fuzzy on the timeline of that, because if it did happen at 3 a.m., that leaves 4 hours for a wound to heal, and I don't know if it was healed, like it's not enough time to heal to this level of which the ME found.
Oh,
That's fair.
Does that make sense? Like, because it was a healed wound, so I don't know how quickly.
So it could have just been like a past thing that's not related.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not going to discount it 100%, maybe, but I would think that it would be kind of a fresher wound.
Yeah. Well, because I feel like with his scabs on the right side of his body make me think that they could have come from the side-by-side crash, because even if it happened before then, like it doesn't take long for something to scab over, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, who knows?
So he did have some healed injuries. Yeah. Okay. We'll come back to the side by side and the off-roading because I think there's just funky stuff. To start with the head and neck, though, I'm going to do jargony autopsy, and then we'll have a discussion to see if it makes sense. So there was an abraded avulsion laceration to the left top of the head. So this was a 4-inch by 2-inch laceration, which apparently looked like a fish or fish-like to the left side of the scalp. And it was deep enough that the bone was exposed. So this, an abraded avulsion laceration is like the skin's peeling off. It's a traumatic injury.
Ugh.
Bone is showing underneath.
Right.
I've decided not to actually do jargony, but the autopsy is available. Actually, I recommend you watching or looking up the autopsy as we go through this, because that will be so much easier to follow along because I go in the same order at which it's laid out in the autopsy. So we'll pause here. You guys go get your resources. Please pull that up and it'll make sense for all of us talking and listening. Okay, head and neck. He had that laceration, left side of the scalp, bone showing. He had abrasions below his left eyebrow, corner of the left eye, left cheek, front of the left ear, basically in his left ear to like the conch and the forward helix, I believe it was, and the left side of his neck. So he's got fresh wounds left side of the head. Of note, he also had abrasions on the right back of the head, and this was like right in behind the ear and to the back of the right side of his neck. So it kind of seems like it came from the left and around, whatever caused the injury. It started on the left, brought over to the right a little bit, and blood was coming out from both his left and right ears. His upper and lower teeth were broken, and fragments of his teeth were found in his mouth. He had abrasions on the inner upper lip and a laceration, so a cut to the inner lower lip. He had lacerations to the top of the left side of his tongue, possibly, I would think, maybe biting his tongue, something happening. He got a cut that way, which side by side, if he did roll over, I can see that. If he rolls to the left, you're going to have a lot more injuries on the left side of your body. He had bleeding under the skin on the back, the base of the skull, the side of the skull, on both sides, and then the left kind of front regions of the head. This is the parietal, occipital, bilateral, temporal, and frontal region, if you know the skull segments, I guess. Lacerations and bleeding of the muscle on the side of your head. This is your temporalis muscle, I believe it is. So he had laceration up there. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Yeah. So he had lacerations to that muscle. And then he also had fractures to the left side and the front of his head. So there's just a lot of injuries on the left. A lot of left side injuries and a lot to the head. And we'll see this as we progress through. The majority of the injuries are to his head and neck.
Okay.
Going back to that skull fracture or the injury to the skull you had kind of talked about, Rebecca, he actually had what's known as a hinge fracture at the base of his skull. So it basically split the middle base of his skull into two completely parts. And then this extended up to the temple region.
Oh my God.
So it was
brutal.
it was a really large fracture.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
At the base of his head. He also had fractures to the base of his skull, like the back of the base of the skull, extending to where the spinal cord connects to the brain. So this is the magnum foramen. And he also had fractures to the occipital condyles, which is kind of the pointy bits at the back of your head, the two little pointy things. If you feel, we're all feeling the back of our heads. Those are the
you can't feel your occipital condyles.
You can't? I thought, what are the two? Oh, she's getting the model out. She's getting the model.
We should have filmed this one. Okay. These are your occipital condyles. So your C1,
okay, so they kind of like
fits into it, and it allows you to nod your head yes.
Huh, that's cool.
Then what are the... Okay, continue.
And so then the bump you're feeling is your nuchal crest.
Nuchal crest.
which is on the back of your skull that your I think trapezius muscles connect to.
Yeah.
I'm just here moving my head in all sorts of ways now, trying to figure out how my bones work in my neck.
Fair enough.
He had bleeding of approximately 20 milliliters in the space between the protective layer that surrounds your brain. His brain was swollen. He had lacerations to the underside of the left side of his skull, brainstem and the vessels around it, the left of the cerebellum, which is the part of the brain like lowest and most furthest back, I guess. I don't know. Look up a picture of a skull and look up a picture of a brain as we talk through this, and that'll help. That may help. He had fractured occipital condyles, like I mentioned, and a fractured neck. So the C1, C2, C6, and C7 vertebrae were all fractured.
That's like his whole neck.
Basically his whole neck. Top of his neck. C3, 4, 5 aren't broken. So it's the very top of his neck and the very base of his neck, essentially.
Interesting.
That's interesting.
So
the C1 and C2 being fractured makes sense with the hinge fracture and the other fractures that happen to the base of his skull.
Yeah.
And C6 and 7 are most commonly fractured in whiplash.
Yeah. Okay. So the way that Rebecca had just moved her head to made me think that it could have caused the partial fracture, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to maybe the side by side, because how else are you going to get that amount of force?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense. And for those of you listening, your C7 is the big bump at the base of your neck.
Oh, that's cool.
Do you feel it?
I'm very bony, so I got a couple of bumps, but
it's like, I guess it doesn't really matter if I show you. Our listeners can't see it.
He also had misalignment of the C1 in the occipital condyle, so the C1 was displaced to the front, and there was air found within his skull and spinal canal.
Ooh.
Yeah. Now, kind of moving to his torso, he had large abrasions to his upper back, and this had a black material in it. I'm just going to confirm. Nope, it just says upper back. So I'm going to assume entire upper back. My interpretation of black material is asphalt of some sort.
Yeah.
He also had different sized abrasions to the left upper back, left shoulder, back of his left arm, the left side of his torso, which had like linear, pinpoint, round, and irregular patterns. So I don't know. I was a bit confused with the pattern situation, like if it was an intentional looking pattern or it just happened to work out in a very systematic way, linear way. I don't know what the right term would be for that.
Yeah. I'm almost envisioning like road rash.
That's what I had assumed as well. Like he had taken a fall. Okay, so we had theorized in our group chat a little bit, or maybe I thought about this and just didn't share it with you guys, that he had been like thrown from a moving vehicle. Like that's what I envision right now. When they went to dispose of a body, they were just driving and threw him out kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that like that's a pretty reasonable hypothesis, because I don't think a reasonable person would purposefully dispose of a body, but by getting out of their car and putting it down on the right beside the highway.
Yeah. And I could see if that were the case, the fetal position may have been just from a stumble and roll out of a moving vehicle that he ended up kind of in a curled position.
Yeah.
I'm also getting like being drugged behind something.
Yes. Okay. I was also thinking that too. But there's no, I don't know about sprains. No sprains were discussed, but there were no fractures to his extremities.
Right.
So I would think maybe if he was being dragged, you would see that in an arm, like the skeletal structure of it or the muscular and joint structure. But
yeah, totally.
It didn't really stand out to me in the autopsy as being such, but not impossible.
Yeah, it could also be like he got hit by a truck or something and got stuck to the grill and drug underneath it too.
Yeah. My mind just went to our modes of execution and being drawn, quartered.
Yeah, mine did too.
Like, yeah, they like dragged him behind a side by side or something. No, he could have.
No, I thought that too, and then I was like, yeah, there's nothing. I didn't know if there was anything until you said that, and I was like, okay, maybe that's not how that works.
Maybe not it. But then he also had abrasions to his right buttock. How do you pronounce that, Journey? You're the anatomy wizard.
I don't know. Buttock.
Okay.
It doesn't. It's like data and data. Okay. Some people pronounce it like buttock, and some people pronounce it buttock.
Buttock, but that just we're gonna go buttock.
I had a really hard time saying that, so maybe I'm wrong.
Okay. Anyways, he also had an abrasion to the left buttock as well. Just a singular one, apparently, on the left side. Lacerations and contusions, which are basically like ruptured blood capillaries, so think kind of bruise, to both lungs. Lacerations of the vessels of the left lung, left side of the heart, so the left aorta, left atrium. Thank you. I took a anatomy class, and it's really showing this episode. Just not a 4-year degree. Okay, left atrium, his spleen, and to his stomach, the part of the stomach that's closest to the esophagus. He had soft tissue bleeding of the back to the back of his upper chest cavity. There was an accumulation of blood in his chest cavity of at least 1,200 milliliters. So he had 700 milliliters on kind of the right side of his chest cavity, 500 mils on the left side at least. At least 150 mils of blood in the fluid-filled sac that surrounds your heart. He had bleeding of at least 200 mils in the space between his abdomen and pelvis. He had fractures to both shoulder blades, fractures to the backside of his ribs, including the 1st through 5th and the 8th rib on the right-hand side. And then on the left side, the 2nd through 5th rib. And these fractures were seen at the spinal ends and posterior shaft. So basically kind of closer to where your rib meets your spine.
Interesting.
So if you look at our handy dandy rib photo, your 1 through 5 kind of matches where your C7 fracture is going to be leading into 1 through 5. And then you also have 8, which is kind of midline on the right hand. And then on the left, you only have 2 through 5.
They align well with the scapular fractures too.
Yeah,
they do.
So it was a lot of upper body, neck, head.
Yeah.
He also had fractures to the T1, T2, and then T4 to 9 vertebrae.
Oh, wow.
And the T11. So
his whole back.
You're looking at pretty well his whole back. Primarily upper to mid back as well.
Wow.
He also had a collection of air in the space between both lungs and the chest wall, and then there was more air in the left rather than the right. So that was his torso. There was also a lot. Extremities, though, on the other hand, he did have some linear and irregular shaped abrasions to the inside of his right arm and forearm, to his left elbow, the front and back of both thighs, the front and back of his right knee, the front of his left knee. You have the front of the right leg, the front side of the left leg, and the top of his right foot, side of right ankle, side of right hip. So both sides injuries. This one seems a little more inconsistent with all of the left side head and neck injuries we've been seeing, because there's quite a bit of right side injuries on this on his extremities, but
yeah.
He also had a contusion and like bruising, I guess, to the back of his right heel. So on his right side, right arm, right forearm, front and back thigh, knee, I guess just frontal leg, and then foot, ankle, hip, heel on the right side. Left side, you've got elbow, thigh, front of knee, front left leg, and that's it. So not so much down by his feet.
It's interesting that it feels like a lot of the damage on his like arms and legs are on the right side, whereas a lot of the damage on his head and neck are on the left side.
Yeah, that's really strange.
Which makes me think 2 separate occasions. I can understand maybe the head injuries on the left side being from rolling over in a side-by-side. Or maybe that's the right side. Like one of the 2 being from whatever happened in that accident. But it doesn't account for the other set of injuries we see.
Yeah.
Because you're not doing like, well, I don't know the circumstances of the accident. So I don't know. Maybe he is rolling out of a side-by-side. Maybe he is being thrown off of a side-by-side. But it just doesn't seem consistent between the 2.
Yeah. Yeah, especially like, because no one really knows what happened on the side-by-side. But if he was standing on top of it and it crashed, the injuries would be rather extensive, I imagine.
Yeah, I can imagine they'd be quite substantial.
Yeah, definitely.
Which makes
so
me
weird.
Which makes me think and question the timeline of events and what the people at the party have said. Because was it that they were in the side-by-side, he was joking about on top of it, not wearing a helmet, flies, knocks his head on a tree or a rock of some sort. No one knows what to do. They leave him there, figure it out, delete everything, come back, put him on the side of the road.
It could be that the injuries were way worse than they expected, and he left on this walk and just stumbled there and died.
Yeah, that's also possible. And I honestly, like, I didn't even consider that one either. There are so many theories.
I don't know if he could just walk away from that though. Like that's where the timeline I get confused.
True, like his back is broken and his neck is broken.
He has a hinge fracture, like the entire base of his skull. You're not walking from that. Which I'm like, okay, was there maybe a little incident with the side-by-sides? They shake it off. That's the incident where he kind of gets fixed up, washed up after. But then there's something else that happens and they go out in the side-by-side again, and that's when he goes flying off.
Yeah.
Because then the autopsy report also says that he was alive. Okay, so the investigation revealed that the decedent was at a house party and drinking, which we've learned. He rode an ATV Ranger vehicle with several men that had a rollover incident. The decedent was alive following the incident and returned to the party where he got into an argument with his girlfriend. The decedent left the house party and was not found until the morning of September 4th. So we see the rollover incident in the autopsy. He leaves the house and was not found. Do we know if other people saw him from the time he was found and left the house? Do we know if he got into an ATV? Like, there's just so many questions.
And there's so many different stories, too. Like, there really is, at least with what's, like, known right now, like, there's no way to tell who's telling the truth and, like, how many times they've changed their stories.
Yeah. And like I said before a little bit, too, there was no evidence of fractures to his extremities. Aside from like the abrasions that he had on his arms and legs, there were no fractures. Which I would think if you're going over on a side-by-side, I'm putting my arms and legs out to like save my fall. I mean, you're intoxicated, which that maybe could be not.
His heel bruise.
Yeah.
He landed hard on that foot.
Yeah.
But again, flying off of the side-by-side, you tend to not land on just one leg.
That's fair.
Without some sort of like other injuries.
Yeah.
I just saw a thing that said that hinge skull fractures are common in motorcycle accidents where they land chin first, which makes sense with the damage to his teeth and his lips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the neck, because that would account for the fractures on his neck too.
Yeah, because that would definitely cause whiplash, I'd say.
Yeah.
Ooh. Which leads me to believe then that maybe it was this ATV, but everyone's scared that they may be charged. No one's talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is very possible too. I mean, like, it's a bunch of drunk kids, essentially. They're like 16 to like 24 years old.
And they're in the panic of it all, say getting rid of it is easier than dealing with it.
Yeah.
As in a human body and a human life, but
yeah.
To each their own, I guess.
Wow. I am really excited is the wrong word, but I can't think of another word. I'm like looking forward to seeing how this case progresses. Yeah. And I hope that they do find something and that it doesn't just go unsolved.
Yeah.
Me too. Absolutely.
Because there's obviously something there. And whether it is just the side-by-side crash, like,
answers.
Hopefully they still find something.
Yeah, the family still deserves to definitively know what happened to their son.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Any answer, in my opinion, any answer is better than no answer at all.
100%.
Absolutely, I would agree.
But yeah, aside from those injuries, despite there being a long list of injuries, the autopsy revealed that everything else about Noah was healthy, like his organs, everything else that they checked for in an autopsy, they were of a healthy 19-year-old. So there were no other.
What was his blood alcohol level? Did they check that?
Okay, so I couldn't find that in the autopsy report, but they did say that toxicology reports were tests were conducted.
Okay,
but I don't
think it really will add to cause of death, but I feel like it's got to be high considering they drank for 4 days.
Yeah. I'm just having like a really quick look through as well, and I'm not seeing anything that
it's on. They have an ethyl alcohol of the heart on the very last page of the autopsy, which is blood 0.14 grams per DL of the heart.
Okay, I found something that said that his blood alcohol level was 0.14.
Okay, so that's exactly the one
0.14 G. Okay, blood alcohol level of 0.14. Do you typically take blood alcohol of the heart when you're deceased?
I have no idea.
They did also test for amphetamine, methamphetamine, fentanyl, cocaine, opiates, PCP, barbiturates, benzodiazepines, and none were detected. So no drugs, blood alcohol content of 0.14.
Which is very high.
That is very high. Because isn't the legal limit 0.08?
It is, yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
They were having fun.
Clearly.
But, yeah. So cause of death determined multiple blunt force injuries. Manner of death is still undetermined.
Wow.
So, like we kind of said at the beginning, we ask that if you know anything, if you're listening to this because you're curious or you're listening to this because you're a local and you know of what's going on, just contact the state authorities.
Yeah.
Like 580-353-0783. I don't know if our podcast will reach the states in that sense, but answers are still answers. And I think having these conversations brings light to it and keeps the investigation going.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, that's the autopsy.
Craziness. Okay, well, thank you so much, both of you, for sharing this really sad case. For our listeners, make sure you take care of yourself after this. I know I'm feeling just a bit bummed after this, which is totally fair. So just
absolutely
take some time to decompress and reset yourself and look after yourself. Our next topic is also going to be another heavy one, and it's in honor of Truth and Reconciliation Day, and we are discussing LIDAR and residential schools of Canada. I'm really looking forward to doing that one. That one's something that we wanted to do for a long time.
I will say too, I will preface, I don't think we're going to have the time in its entirety to go fully into residential schools because there is so much to unpack and years and generations of trauma. So
Yeah,
we'll do what we can to give an idea for those who may not know what they are.
exactly. A lot of people
and
don't
bring light
know
to
about residential schools in Canada
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah.
So,
Talk about how LiDAR was used to bring light to finding hundreds of children.
exactly, because I remember there being quite a bit of like controversy and conspiracy around the LiDAR technology that was being used that made me really mad. So I am excited to kind of share the science of what was actually being used.
Yeah.
All right. So people can find us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok at What the Forensics. Our Twitter is WT Forensics Pod. Our website is whattheforensics.ca, where you can find all of the sources for this episode, including Noah Presgrove's autopsy report, as well as images explaining what we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Our email is whattheforensics@gmail.com if you want to suggest other topics or you have any questions, comments, or concerns. It would be awesome if you guys left us some reviews and or comments on our episodes. You can leave a review on Apple and you can reply to a question on Spotify. So just any sort of interaction would be greatly appreciated. Also, make sure that your apps are auto-downloading. They stopped doing that. It really screwed up our numbers. We would absolutely love it if you could turn that back on. If you can also like, subscribe, and follow us wherever you can to stay updated on all things What the Forensics. And check out the link in our show notes if you're wanting to start your own podcast. We have a link to the Zencastr software that we use to record that has been so nice. And with that being said, this has been another episode of What the Forensics. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time. Bye!
Bye!
Just a reminder to everyone that we are not professionals in the forensic science field. We are just interested in forensics and want to share what we are learning with our listeners. We're trying to give you the most accurate information, but we are human and can make mistakes. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you next week.